Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority Board meeting. My name's Lowry Snow. I'm one of the
Sorry.
coaches.
Okay,
I
thanks.
serve with Representative Jordan Tusher, who is joining us virtually this morning. I'm advised by Alan that we have a quorum assembled both here in our meeting room and also virtually. So with that, we'll call the meeting to order and move forward. I think all of us know that it's been some period of time, 2 months since we last convened. I think according to Alan and others who served up here on Capitol Hill during the interim, almost every member of the board at some time or another was on Capitol Hill either as a legislator or an advocate. And we appreciate the contribution each of you have made. Special thanks goes to Alan and his team, JC, also Representative Tusher, and our legislators who are members of this board for their help in moving legislation forward and getting it passed. So thank you, especially for your extra help. The next matter on our agenda is to receive public comment. As a reminder, we all know and believe that this is a public project. As a board, we have a responsibility to ensure that this project reflects the values and provides the values of the public and also provides broad public benefits. Accordingly, we value input from members of the public. In fact, we have received over 16,000 responses from Utah residents sharing their priorities, their positions on certain issues, their ideas, and their feedback, all of which has been used by us to guide our planning. So therefore, we welcome public comment, subject to the guidelines that have been approved and outlined on the agenda. Those who wish to speak during this public portion, if you're online, if you've joined us there and would like time to speak, if you'd raise your hand, we'll recognize you. Let's start first with some of the members of the public that are here in our meeting room. Anyone here wish to take advantage of public comment? If you raise your hand and come forward. All right, I see 2 hands. Let's take you ladies first, maybe the lady on the center aisle and then the other lady, if that's okay. In fact, both of you just come up. We'll get you both queued up here. If that's okay. So welcome to our committee. And what we'd like to have you do, if you don't mind, is state your names for our record, and then you can proceed. If you'll pull that mic towards you. I think your microphone is on and you may proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Super. Okay, Cindy was going to go first, but
Well, I'm
that's
happy to
okay.
jump in.
No, I'll go.
So my name is Mary Ann Wright, and is that too loud? I'll back off.
I think you're good.
Okay. Mary Ann Wright, and I chair a group called the Emerytown Heritage Council from the tiny little town of Emery in Emery County, town of 300, and it is graced with a building that was put together by many pioneers in 1898 to 1901. It was a very iconic building. If you ever drive down Highway 10 from Huntington, Castledale, Farron, then there's Emery, then there's I-70, and then there's nothing for a long ways. Anyway, a very beautiful building, and don't ever raise your hand in a public meeting at a town council, because 7 years ago I did that. And when the mayor said, who would like to work on saving this building that was starting to sink into the muck? So that is how I got identified 7 years ago and 4 mayors ago with renovating, revitalizing the Emery Pioneer Church that was built as a community center, a chapel, and a school. And since then, I have been asked in several cases to help with chapels. And so I'm here to talk about the Chapel by the Wayside. And my thoughts are that it would be very important to take advantage of the opportunity to really celebrate this chapel as in the community that it will be part of. And, you know, it's the perception of it as a place that started as a place, as a symbol of redemption, perhaps of penitence. And it's just a really grand opportunity. And my strong recommendations to the Point Commission would be to have people developed who are developed in the area of preservation help with things like tours, and also help with things like putting this building on the National Register of Historic Places. And that is a pretty important thing. Our building in Emery was placed on the National Register in 1980. It's a pretty complicated process, but it's very, very important for tax purposes and for just recognition of what this building at the Chapel of the Wayside stood for. And there are so many people who are involved in preservation that would really like to get involved in helping with tours. So those are my main comments. I really urge you to do that. It really puts the wind in the sails of making this building the important piece of the community that you will be building.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And before
Thank
we
you.
turn time to your companion there, Mary Ann, this wouldn't be Emery, the home place of Mike Mauer, would it be? We're talking about.
Yeah, I think it is.
I think it is too.
Yes.
Mike never lets us forget that. So,
Yes.
and I have to tell you, the Wayside Chapel is one of my very favorite subjects. And I can only speak for myself as one member, but I'm really grateful that we made a decision as a board to take steps to preserve that. And if any of the board or any of the public haven't read the story about how that was constructed and by what means, and the requests of the prisoners to have that for them, it's a remarkable story. And I think also represents and symbolizes the things that you mentioned. So thank you for raising your hand 7 years ago and leading you to this point. So with that, we'll turn time to your partner, ask
Thank
her
you.
if she'd likewise give us your name, and we'd love to hear your presentation.
My name is Cindy Cromer. Can you hear me, or do I have to punch something?
Maybe
Push?
pull the mic just a little closer to you if you can.
My name is Cindy Cromer, and I've spoken to the commission previously about the Chapel by the Wayside. I knew I had to speak to you again when a friend told me about a display from the archives of the Catholic Church, and that it included information about the state prison. Indeed, it did. Religious activities at the prison did not begin with the petition to Governor Clyde for a chapel. Monsignor Morton, the prison padre, was based at the prison for 20 years. During his tenure, Edward Hall, a resident, designed a portable altar. You have a photograph of that in front of you. And during his tenure, the residents after the design, there were prisoners who built the altar from copper and aluminum. That altar was dedicated 76 years ago this month. And there are quotes in the exhibit about what having religion at the prison meant to the residents. Then I had this light bulb moment, which I frequently have when I'm like in the audience, that the men on either side of Christ at the crucifixion were accused of being thieves. The themes of redemption and forgiveness. How did I miss this connection to the residents of the prison until I was standing in front of this exhibit? A few other thoughts about the chapel as you move forward with the redevelopment of the site. This is a feel-good story, like the range to river connection. I don't know who thought of that, but it was genius. So how can anyone object to stories embodied in the chapel by the wayside? As Marian Wright suggested, a tour of the building would inspire people regardless of their faith. Good things happened here against all odds. As Marian mentioned, the building is eligible for tax credits based both on its age and its social history. Those credits could attract a proposal for the reuse of the building. I own 10 buildings, all of them eligible for tax credits, but I've never used the credits. I consider them like money in the bank. I can use them when I need to. And your staff will have the details on the federal credits. Additionally, Salt Lake City has recently drafted 2 ordinances relevant to adaptive reuse. One of them includes the concept of recognizing a community benefit for the protection of a historic building. The other, on incentives for adaptive reuse, received a positive recommendation from the Planning Commission on February 28th this year and is on its way now to the City Council. So Salt Lake City has already done much of the groundwork regarding incentives for adaptive reuse. And a recent example of adaptive reuse in Salt Lake is the approval of the former Douglas Ward as part of the McGillis School. So your staff has information on potential relevant ordinances, tax credits, and archives from the Catholic Church. Thank you for protecting the chapel so far, especially during the demolition phase. It was certainly at risk then. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Susan?
Cindy, but I answer to
Cindy.
anything as long as it's not 4 letters
Okay.
or 5.
Cindy Cromer?
Yes.
K, is that K or?
This is, yeah, well, it was originally in Germany, but it's now a C.
Okay. Well, Cindy, thank you very much. And I would hope that as the preservation efforts move forward, that the story of the Catholic Church involvement at the prison site is preserved as well. That's remarkable, truly. So thank you both. Let's see if there are any questions from members of the board for you or any comments. Well, let me get you a mic.
I'd just like to say thank you. So we're glad over the years of planning this that we've been able to keep the chapel, and then it's good to get input and hear from people that are very well versed in preservation, since a lot of us aren't. So, but we welcome your time and effort, and thanks for coming up here. It looks like that prison is saved, and now we just got to figure out what the use is going to be going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, April. Any other comments or questions? All right, we'll move forward with the items on the agenda. The next matter is to approve the minutes of our last meeting held January 8th, 2024. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. April, your motion is, do I have a second?
Second.
Senator Stevenson is a second. It's been moved that we approve the minutes of January 8th. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously, and accordingly, the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is to consider our current financial state of the board. We're going to turn some time to Dawn. If you'd like to step up, Dawn, as I think all of the board members recognize we have a responsibility to all Utahns to ensure integrity in the financial management of our board resources. As part of that responsibility, we regularly review our expenditures relative to the budget. Special thanks to April Cooper and Jim Russell, who meet monthly with staff to provide guidance. And with that, we'll recognize Dawn Willie, our Director of Operations, for your comments, Dawn.
Thank you, Chairman Snow. I also want to express my appreciation to both April and Jim. They are such a great asset on the Finance Committee. They get into the weeds and really review and provide tremendous feedback. So we appreciate their service. I personally appreciate it. You probably had a chance to look through this just briefly. I just want to call your attention first to where we're at on our burn rate for our budget. So as you can see in the top right corner, we have listed where we should be at by month, leading to a full completion 100% in June. So February, we should be at about 60% of our budget spent for each of these line items here. At this point of the year, at the end of February, we're at 27%. So we are well below where we anticipated. A few notes, of course, on that. First and foremost, just evidences our commitment as a board and staff to ensuring we're using taxpayer resources where they're actually needed and working at the most efficiently to deliver this project. While we're under budget in many areas, we are burning a little bit high on certain categories, and I want to review those quick. First, let me just mention that many of this is through efficiency. Some of this is even with our personnel budget line. We had one other FTE budgeted for this year. Alan will talk more about that at this point, but obviously didn't use those funds for the majority of this fiscal year. And so you'll see some of those elements here that may roll into next year. Those areas where we're running a little bit high primarily are expenses that are either an upfront expense in the year or are one time throughout the year. And so we naturally will incur those. It'll appear as though we're burning high in those areas. However, realistically, we'll probably be under budget by the time we hit the end of the fiscal year here. The one area where we do show as being over budget is in our data processing charges. And that is really due to a couple factors. One, the Department of Technology Services did not bill due to a glitch in the system, did not bill for some FY23 charges. And so those were incurred in FY24. But then also we've taken some of expenses, in-house direct expenses that previously consultants had paid for, and then we reimbursed. Those subscriptions, by taking them in, we've actually realized some additional cost savings to the Land Authority and leveraged our tax exempt status as well to reduce costs. And so overall, we still are under budget of that total technology expenses of $9,500. We're still under budget overall, but we're just showing a higher burn rate in that specific line there. But we are working diligently to make sure that we are tracking our budget on top of these elements, and might likely need to make an adjustment to that specific line given the unique circumstances on this fiscal year. So with that, are there any questions I can answer regarding the budget?
Thank you, Don. Any questions from the board? Okay. Well, you must have done a great job. No one's wanting to cross-examine you, so that's a good thing. Thank you very much, Don, for your expertise and your help.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will give, and April, I don't want to put you on the spot, but as a member of that committee to help with oversight, any comments you'd like to make about your work or the presentation?
Sure. We just spend time reviewing the expenses to make sure that they look appropriate. We'll ask some questions about okay, like the last meeting, it just said current charges and there was $9,000. And I'm like, but it doesn't say what those charges are. That's just a timing. Like, they'll put current charges in for 1 month and then the next month it gets dispersed to if it was membership dues or a hardware or software or whatever. So there are, as a whole, we're very under budget. We know we've got some projects and some stuff's coming up, so they've been very careful to save funding. But I think it's great. And I think on both sides, the people that have been in charge of spending it and those that are auditing it and looking at it in the meetings, that we're being frugal and proper with the money.
Thank you. I hope you know, April, and Jim's not here today, but I hope you know how much we appreciate your direct involvement on behalf of the board in that process. So
Thank you.
thank you. Next item on the agenda is titled Selection of a Public Finance Officer. The Land Authority issued a request for statement of qualifications seeking a qualified public finance advisor for the board. The board may select the public finance advisor from among the applicants. We now have a clearer idea of our infrastructure needs and also available revenue streams. We're now ready to develop a more detailed funding strategy for infrastructure and other key elements of the point. To help with that strategy, we propose to engage a firm with public finance expertise to serve essentially as a municipal advisor to the Land Authority Board. In the past, we've utilized high-level expert consultants to advise us, and this is in that same vein. So with that, Dawn, we'll turn some time to you to talk about the process, and then we'll have some discussion, and maybe you can help facilitate that. Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recently, as the chairman announced, we issued the request for statement of qualifications for financial advisory services for municipal bond-related issues. And the Land Authority anticipates, of course, issuing new debt or pursuing other public finance approaches in a variety of capital projects. Among other duties, the advisor will be required to take an active role in assisting the Land Authority with respect to the issuance of debt and possibly other financing options, including public sale or private placement of bonds. In preparation for this, we assembled a review committee to be able to take a look at each of the proposals that were submitted and then conduct interviews. That committee included our Executive Director, Alan Matheson, Jim Russell, Tasia Stanley, and myself. The four of us reviewed all proposals that were submitted, and from that narrowed down a selection of two that we interviewed. The timeline for this, we issued the RFSQ in January, on January 3rd. We took questions and provided responses with a cutoff date of January 10th, and then a final submission date of January 24th. From January 24th to February 27th, about a month, we took the time to thoroughly review each of these proposals. They're fairly in-depth when we're talking public finance, so we gave plenty of time to be able to review in depth and make sure that we were comfortable with the qualifications of the firms that had submitted. After reviewing and scoring all proposals, the Land Authority interviewed two firms, and the recommendation from the committee is to hire Zions Public Finance to serve in the municipal advisory role for the point. The recommendation is based on several factors. First, familiarity with the project, positive references across the board. We got glowing recommendations from the references that were provided. Past work experience with municipalities in Utah, specifically working with the Utah Treasurer's Office and other strategic partners of the point. And then, of course, competitive pricing, of course, in the interest of taxpayers, recognizing that we want to be conscious in the fees that are associated with this. And Zions Bank produced a very competitive pricing in their bid. And so with that, I guess we can open it to questions.
Thank you, Dawn. Any questions from the board? If you'd, April, did you have a question? Maybe it's an old light. I apologize. Okay. Any questions from members online? I don't have access to that, but I think that we do. So while we're looking there, Don, can you comment on overall the strength of the folks who responded? Did we get a good response from solid candidates?
We did. We received a total of 3 responses to the request. Across the board, we saw great qualifications. We saw well-experienced firms, and they exhibited experience in different areas. And so, like I mentioned, ultimately it came down to that municipal work that we saw. But across the board, we did see great qualifications, some high quality firms that had submitted.
Thank you. So it's your recommendation and the recommendation of the group that assembled and vetted these candidates that we appoint or that we contract with Public Finance or Zion Public Finance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Alan, do you have any comments you'd like to make on the candidates or the process?
No, I think Don covered it well. We looked carefully. We were pleased with the quality of those that applied. But for the reasons Don mentioned, we're recommending that Zion Public Finance be selected.
Thank you. Well, if there is no other discussion, Chair would entertain a motion to select Zion Public Finance as the Points Finance Advisor. Thank you, Jeff. The motion is made by Jeff that we select Zion Public Finance as our advisor. Do I have a second to the motion? Senator Stevenson seconding the motion. Any discussion to the motion? Not seeing any indication. I'll place it for vote. All in favor of selecting Zion Public Finance as our public finance advisor to this board and for the point, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Don, for your presentation, for your assistance. But you should stay seated, it looks like. The next item on the agenda is to consider a process to create an advanced air mobility plan. We can't always plan a future-focused transportation system without also contemplating the impact of advanced air mobility, looking to the future. Our team has had many conversations with UDOT and other experts and is now ready to explore next steps in that planning. So, Don, you're still seated at the dais there. We'll turn the time to you and have you bring the board up to date on that process.
Thank you. As you know, we've been looking across the board at transportation options at the point. We've been charged by the state legislature to provide a model for emerging 21st century transportation solutions. This includes BRT, light rail, last mile circulator, mobility hubs, car share, micromobility, and a vertiport is essential component of a fully developed multimodal transportation plan. We are planning for today and for decades to come. We're requesting board approval to issue an RFSQ, or request for statement of qualifications, to develop an urban air mobility master plan. This work will be conducted in collaboration with UDOT's Aeronautics Division and in accordance with legislation passed this year that regulates advanced air mobility. We're taking action now to ensure that we can install the appropriate infrastructure as it's easier, more cost-effective to do it now at the onset of construction than retrofitting in the future. This could impact parking garages, structured parking garages, upgrading electrical lines, height of building. There's many factors that it could impact, and so starting now gives us the ability to be proactive in that planning. The following is a baseline an overview of the scope of work that we're proposing with this. And we're asking in the RFSQ for the consultants to expand on this, but this is a baseline that we're requesting in the RFSQ. 2 tasks. First is utilization demand study. That would include a regional flight pattern definition, trip demand projections, projection of usage at the point, opportunities for ride sharing, and finally drone delivery services as well as part of that study. The second would be a vertiport technical feasibility analysis. And that would include a public agency regulation review and summary, project, physical environment and environmental impacts, access analysis, to identify potential vertiport sites within the point, conceptual vertiport configuration, and finally the cost estimate associated with this as well. That's what we have determined, or what we've identified as the key factors that we'd include in this RFSQ, with of course additional information that would be included in that as well. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Thanks, Don. Questions from the board? Not seeing any indication. Maybe I'm going to ask a few and see if see if you can respond, maybe just for my benefit, but this is pretty exciting, isn't it?
Very.
So give us a hypothetical, or a scenario is a better word, what we're talking about here. And for the public listening in, tell us, this is forward-thinking stuff. Tell us what we're talking about and whether other communities across the country, planned developments are taking these steps as well.
Absolutely. We would be at the forefront of this. As we've looked, there are groups, many of which are startups in this technology, some that are locally based in Utah actually as well. So really, as we've looked, we haven't seen anyone that's fully implemented any of these air taxis, so to speak, strategies, and started construction. So we really would be at the forefront of implementing this type of technology. But realistically, it just provides an entire new arena that we can take advantage of. And it doesn't just impact, of course, the point site itself. This has regional, statewide impact as well, as we look at where these vertiports could connect to, going down to Utah County, to the airport, connecting to Park City. And so that will all be part of the analysis, but we're early in this process and would be early in the adoption likely as well.
So as I understand it, it seemed like I saw a presentation some time ago, but essentially an Uber drone or aircraft that someone landing at the Salt Lake City International Airport that has business at the point could catch a ride with an air taxi, so to speak.
Correct.
And fly directly from there to a vertiport at the point. Is that conceptually sound?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, congratulations to you and Alan and everyone else that has captured this forward thinking, as I have to believe, and it seems like in the presentation I saw, some of the dates projected where this will be a reality is in many ways is not that far out. So thanks again for your help in being forward thinking and getting that process underway for that planning. I know you don't have the plan yet. Would you anticipate more than one vertiport at this location, or is that too early to even say at this point?
It probably is a little early to say. You know, we would imagine that there would be maybe a central hub that would include, of course, multiple air taxis coming in and out. As we've looked at this, I mean, even the broader scope could entail smaller sites, smaller vertiports that would be could be located elsewhere. This is even identified in established communities using even a circle, right? So you live on a street that has a circle at the end of it, that those in the future could be utilized as potential takeoff and landing sites in established communities. So there's a lot of discussion around how this is implemented, both in existing communities and in new communities. And this analysis would help us understand what that structure would look like and be most advantageous to the point.
Very good. Thank you very much, Don, for your presentation and for answering the question. Oh, absolutely. Let's go to Senator Stevenson first, and then we'll come back to
I've just got a comment. I've been thinking through this, and I would like to volunteer to be the 500th rider after we get this all worked out.
Got you down.
Thank you.
Let the minutes so reflect. So, All right, let's hear from Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Don, for outlining that information. Just a couple of things that I think are worth mentioning. Number one, there's a lot going on in this space in our state, and UDOT has been doing some analysis of the regional opportunities. Another group, 47G, is going to be doing a more detailed review. We don't want to duplicate that, so we're going to do it kind of in order, and our review would be looking site specifically. And I think all of us recognize that initially this is mostly a freight issue, deliveries. We want to make sure that the technology is very sound before any passengers would be involved in this. But it's important to look at it now for the reasons Don said. We need to explore what's the impact of the power lines? What's the impact of building size on being able to access the site? What potential constraints would there be with the topography, et cetera? So our initial work would be just a feasibility study. Does it make sense here at this site? If so, what are some of the opportunities? And we could go from there. So it'll be small steps at first with this view toward making sure that we are prepared for what's coming so that Utah can, again, be on the cutting edge. The legislature's passed legislation in this area, so they're thinking ahead, and we just want to be part of the statewide effort.
Thank you, Alan, for your comments and for your help. And again, I congratulate our leadership for thinking forward. We thinking in the future, if we can, 20, 25 years. I don't know how many times, I don't know whether you've ever had the experience of designing a home, and it's our dream home, and that's the case for us. And 15 years later, say, gee, why didn't we think of this? And why didn't we put this in? And so looking into the future is and visioning and trying to see where, especially with respect to mobility, is going to be within that time is vital. So thanks.
Sure.
All right, next item on our agenda.
I think we have a question for Mayor Wilson.
Okay, looks like we have some more comments, and I apologize for missing those. Mayor Wilson, if you can hear me, we'll turn on your mic, or you can turn on your mic and make your comment.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And as someone who in the 70s loved to turn on the Saturday morning cartoons and watch the Jetsons, it looks like the future is here. It is very exciting. I appreciate the focus by staff and the board on this issue. I just want to point out that I continue to have some concerns, and I know that time will sort this out, but I think when you think about our beautiful skies, some of the concerns have been raised by Alan as it relates to infrastructure. You know, if you were to walk down the road in your neighborhood, you might come across somebody walking their dog and say hello and chat. And I wonder about the crowded airspace of the future, and just want us to be wise about recognizing the upside, but also acknowledging the downside. And I do have concerns about visual pollution, noise pollution, and privacy. So all that is going to be worked through, not just by us, but by the FAA, federal agencies. The state is leaning in, the legislature, and let's get it right. So thank you for allowing me a moment.
Thank you, Mayor. And you've made some really important points. And part of our planning moving forward, I think, is, as you say, to make sure that we take into consideration all of those elements that protect our environment and protect our state. So thank you. Any other comments or questions? I don't see any hands raised or microphones indicating, so we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Oh, sure. This is on our agenda as an action item. So the chair would entertain a motion to issue an RFSQ to identify a contractor to assess the feasibility of advanced air mobility. Senator Stevenson.
Would make that motion that we issue that RFQ.
Motion is that we issue the RFQ as stated. Do I have a second to the motion?
Second, this is Ryan.
Ryan, thank you for your second. Any discussion to the motion? All in favor of the motion that we issue the RFSQ as we have discussed, please say aye.
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 Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for your help. Thanks, Senator Stevenson.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could I make a quick comment?
Absolutely.
You know, I hope we all realize how fortunate we are to, and how well planned we are to live in an area and at a time when we make sure these type of things are taken care of. I just had a flashback several years ago. After the curtain went down in Europe, I was at Arnold Air Force Base in Tennessee with a general in the United States Air Force. And he made they were showing us what type of testing and what type of analysis goes into putting an aircraft in the air and moving that technology forward. And I asked him, I said, is there any, I was so impressed. I said, is there anything like this anywhere else in the world? And he said, well, we thought the Soviet Union had something like this until the wall went down, and we had opportunity to go in and talk to their engineers and some of the people that are building their aircraft. And I said, so what did you come up with? And he says, they don't have anything like this. And I asked him what the process was for developing an aircraft or a new system like we're talking about here. He said, well, apparently the engineers would do the very best they could. They would take out everything that they could possibly take out. They would build an airplane, they would put a pilot in it, and they would have the pilot take off. If the pilot came back, he told them what was wrong, and if he didn't come back, they went back to the drawing board. And that's always been just a point in my life where I thought, wow, what an incredible country we have, where we do have processes set up that take new ideas, new projects, and puts them into a process to where we can get something that's not only works but is safe for the people that are involved in the process. So just thanks for allowing me to indulge just a minute or two on that. That was just what passed the back of my mind. A lot of things are doing that lately. They're going past the back of my mind. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator, very much. And we're happy to indulge you almost any time. So one of the things you said, which is true, sometimes there's a lot of folks criticizing our country, but there's a lot of great things going on in this country and in this state. And I'm grateful to be alive during this time and be able to participate. All right, with that, let's go to the next item, which is to hear from our Executive Director, Alan. The process to develop the point is complex, and there is ongoing activity on many fronts, and we just talked about one of the unique challenges in looking into the future and developing for that. We thought it'd be useful for us as members of the board and the public to hear a detailed update on our current activities from our director. So with that, Alan, we'll turn the time to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's always a pleasure to be with you. I learn a lot from this group, and I'm inspired by your commitment to this state and the people. So it's been a couple of months since we met, and there's a lot happening. We thought it would be valuable to spend a little bit of time sharing where we are on various activities. So you have a little update, a little more conversant in some of the behind the scenes work that's happening. And so I'm just going to kind of jump in, and happy to stop and answer questions along the way. But we've got a little more time today than we typically do, so wanted to be able to spend some time with you. First of all, a little update on the legislative session. There were a few bills that directly impact this organization. First, SB 198, Point of the Mountain State Land Authority amendments, which, we can credit Senator Stevenson and Representative Tusher for co-sponsoring that. It does a number of things that I think are helpful to us. One, it provides that 50% of the state share of sales tax generated on the site can go to project purposes. So it can support bonds for additional infrastructure and the like. State shares about 4.7%, so half of that, 2.35% of sales that could be used to help fund needs at the project. There's also a provision in there that is related to the conflict of interest provisions that we think are very important to make sure that this board is fully independent and has no personal interest in the outcome of the project. But there was a change made that allows members of the board to lease buildings on the site on the same terms as anybody else, market rates, no favoritism. There's also kind of a technical change that says that if we acquire some additional adjacent land, and I'll give you an example of this, it becomes point of the mountain state land subject to the land use authority of this board. There are going to be some slivers along the site that are needed just for rights of way in transportation, and that just confirms that it can be planned as part of the broader project. There's also language that clarifies that any municipal bonds or any bonds that are issued by this body will be tax exempt. That wasn't fully clear in the previous language of the statute. And then language that puts in place more detail around bonding, taking provisions from other areas of the statutes. So that's that bill. HB 80, candidate and office holder disclosure modifications. This is one, again, based on ethics, wanting to make sure that all of those who are appointed or elected serving on various boards avoid any conflict. And so the requirement here is that members of various boards, including this one, will file a conflict of interest form annually between January 1 and January 31 of each year. Elected officials can just link to their disclosure forms that they're already required to submit, and those who are not elected officials will just fill out the new conflict of interest form. Interestingly, it says that if those forms aren't filed, that it is a Class B misdemeanor. It also puts on staff the responsibility not just to remind, but if those forms are not submitted after a reminder and a little bit of a grace period, that we have to report to the Attorney General that fact and can impose a $100 fine on that board member that goes into executing this particular provision. So don't worry, we're going to be helping you. We'll give you notice. We'll have the forms. We'll send them out and make sure that everything is handled appropriately. SB 154, independent entities, identifies between 20 and 25 entities in the state that will go through a process. So by May 1st of each year, the Legislative Management Committee can identify one or more of those entities and direct them to do a self-evaluation of best practices. There will be a toolbox that will be created that outlines best practices for organizations. And after that self-evaluation, which is submitted to the governor and then to what they call a consensus group that includes Ledge Council and research, legislative fiscal analyst, the legislative auditor general. They put together a report that then goes to the Executive Appropriations Committee, Legislative Management, the Auditor, et cetera. And those bodies can then take any action they feel is necessary. So that should start up next year because the bill becomes effective May 1 this year. So we'll be looking for that. And then finally, we didn't ask for any appropriations this year, but the legislature did appropriate $50 million as part of a broader transportation package for the Front Runner station at the Point. Now, that's not just for a station. That's to supplement the double tracking of the rail lines throughout the system. It's part of a broader process, as I said, to reduce transit times from half an hour to 15 minutes during rush hour. And so we're thrilled to be part of that, excited about the support that's coming in, and think that that will further help connect the Point to the broader region, make sure that people at the site and throughout the region can access places all along the Wasatch Front. Any questions on the legislative pieces, or legislators want to add anything?
Let's get your mic on.
I would, former Representative Snow and I ran the original legislation for the Point. I was involved in prison relocation and all the things that have gone on down there for the last, I think we're probably year 13 or something like that. And fascinating project. I'm glad I've been able to be involved the entire time. I've kind of become the land use authority guy at the legislature. I've got the inland port, I have MITA. And then this particular, there's one you don't have on there that I think will maybe save us some time later on, and that's the alcohol bill. We ended up, there was some things in the alcohol bill this year that we did for downtown hockey, baseball, so forth, that will eventually prove fruitful for us out at the Point, because it changed some of the proximity laws that we have in the state. And I think as we went down to California and looked at what was going on down there, I think those laws would have to change in order to create the atmosphere that we think people will want to create in this area. But this bill is always interesting to run because we have two sides of the legislature. We have an extreme right and extreme left. When this went out of the Senate, I think we got all the votes except two, and we got one that was extreme right and extreme left. One individual thinks that we're doing a public takeover. This is an experiment in socialism and possibly communism, and the other one just dislikes everything that goes on that for some reason that government is involved in. But it's always a fun bill to run. I say fun because of just the dynamic that we're able to put into it. We look at the other land use authorities. They're all different. They all have different missions. They all have different needs, but we seem to be able to get everything put together and make it work. This, I think, all the hard part, the hard legislative part of the Point of the Mountain is kind of behind us now. And I think we have everyone convinced that this is not some kind of a socialist takeover. We're not taking property and putting it into the common good. And we have figured the profit motive is still alive and well in this project. So anyway, I just appreciate the opportunity I've had. And Lowry, you kind of gave me that from the beginning, I think, and then my involvement with the prison relocation process. But as I look back on a legislative career at some point in time, this will kind of be a highlight for me as to, and to go look at that and say, we were able to help accomplish what's gone on there. I got to play on really good teams. And, but I appreciate, Alan, I've said this lots of times, and you and I we went back, we go back a long way. We go back to when you chaired or when you were with Envision Utah, and I was involved there. And anyway, this has just been it was a sort of a fun legislative session, other than I found out that, I'm not as young as I used to be as we went through it. But I get down to the end of the legislative session, and I've got the budget that I've tight. And then when I get 3 or 4 bills, and for some reason I'm not on the floor, so they get circled and they just keep bumping toward the end of the session. But we always seem to get them passed, and it works out well. But what a thrill to be able to work with all of you and watch really good things happen. And I think we're all going to be just totally amazed. Give us a couple more years and we'll see the construction, and wow, it'll be a process for the state that it'll be another record breaker across the country. I think well noticed and well rewarded. Reward the taxpayer well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to make a comment, but let me see if there are other members of the commission that would like to comment. Let's go to Representative Stenquist. Is your mic on?
It is, yes, thank you. My question is specifically around the $50 million for the front runner station. I'm, understanding that is for the station specifically. That's correct. So I want to just clarify that. But then we've also heard from UTA that in order to, have a stop there, that the additional funding and I know there's been a lot of funding put in, that additional double tracking is required for that. And so is there additional funding needed for the double tracking to enable that station to be built? And will this $50 million, does that constitute the what we expect to be the entire cost of that station? Or is there more funding needed in general?
Let me get your mic on.
Front runner, I think, as we all understand, is a big project in progress, and that will be picked on in sections as it completes pieces of that work well. We have the front runner station there. There's expansion to try and take that north to Brigham City and south down to at least Payson. We put where we have from UDOT and the UTA combined now into one area. We have over $1 billion set aside in transportation. And that money, the director can draw on, and the Transportation Commission will be able to draw on that and help some of these projects. We found a lot of the projects we do on our highways now, we we kind of piecemeal them, and people wonder why that happens. We don't go out and take on the, $1.3 billion project like we used to. And it's because there are savings at certain size projects. And I think this fits with UTA also. You won't see UTA double tracked the complete length. I think it'll be double tracked as pieces of it work best. There's a lot of remodeling going on. Union Pacific will do a lot of remodeling in the Salt Lake area and in different areas right now. And as they do that, double tracking will certainly fall into part of that. So I think the best answer to that is this is a work in progress. A lot of things going on, but we think we have maybe not adequate capital for that particular project. We have access to adequate capital to take care of the project. So
Okay, so you're saying there's adequate capital, but it's subject to the Transportation Committee.
it is,
putting
and then-
those, and specifically double tracking the sections that would be necessary to enable the station to happen.
yeah, the double tracking, I think as they do that, they'll do it in areas where they need trains to pass, where they, we certainly don't have to acquire a lot more right away. I look at the strip in Davis County between, say, Layton or Clearfield, and boy, that's pretty narrow there. And I don't know how they can acquire much more track, or maybe they can tighten that up to make it work. I know I go to Europe and it feels like everything's a lot closer, and yet they seem to get along really well with their rail. I think we can learn a lot from what they do over there. But just real quickly, I had opportunity last summer to go back to Omaha with, we went with the Inland Port actually to look at the train process. And I think Union Pacific has become, we've really had an almost adversarial relationship for a long time with them. And all of a sudden, there's been a turnaround. They've become willing now they're going to go in and put the switch engines that we need in this area. The worst polluter we have right now in the area is the switch engines. And they've agreed to have those traded out in a short period of time. We thought we were going to have to maybe figure out how to foot some of the cost of that, and they've voluntarily come in. They're going to take care of that. So I think we've got a really good, viable partner. That makes a lot of difference down where we're talking right now too. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Thanks, Representative Stenquist and Senator, for responding. Other questions from members of the board? Don't see any. You want to wrap up, Al? Anything more you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, we've got several things. That was the first. I want to give a little update on infrastructure. So the engineers and planners are very actively burning the midnight oil to move forward on getting the final construction drawings finished for the infrastructure at the site. Roads are mostly marked out. We talked a little bit about transit. They've got the right-of-way for future light rail identified. We're making a few tweaks on the roads structure on the east side of the project to make it easier to get to deal with the gradient on the site. There's a pretty significant gradient to get out of the prison site up across I-15 to the east side. And so we're trying to align the roads so they don't have to go underground to get under the rail, but can do it at grade. We're also trying to make a few tweaks that provide for better development parcels that will, I think, make for a more interesting project. In terms of water, there will be a new water tank or reservoir built up by the Department of Corrections Administration building on the east side of I-15. The bid package for that is going to go out next week. There will be some lines that will be taken under I-15 for transmission of that water over to the site. That'll be in a bid package that probably will go out within about a month. We're working on agreements right now with Jordan Valley Water and with Draper that will provide some of the state water rights to Jordan Valley. Those rights can then be transferred to Draper, and Draper will be the water provider for the site. So that's moving ahead. We've talked with the South Valley Sewer District. They have sufficient capacity to meet phase one and have plans to expand after that, not just for this project, but throughout this area. In terms of electrical, we're having to move some lines, settle on a new substation site, and those conversations are going well. In terms of the natural gas for the site, that's already started. There's some conduit being, or lines for drilling and digging for the conduit at that site, and of course fiber. So just wanted you to be aware that there's an awful lot happening. The infrastructure started. You'll see bid packages going out in the next few weeks, months, and activity on the site over the course of the next few months. In terms of phase one, our development partners, the Point Partners, are engaging landscape architects and architects to develop the first takedown for phase one, which will be around the promenade, kind of our world-class Main Street area with shopping, retail, restaurants, residential, office, et cetera. Convergence Hall will be part of that, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And so detailed planning is well underway. making sure that it all complies with the design guidelines that you have adopted. And the expectation is, and we're hoping, that we can have a groundbreaking ceremony on part of Phase 1 this year. Talked a little bit earlier about public finance. We now have a public finance advisor in place and are working carefully with the developers and others to have a plan to make sure that we're able to put in the public resources of this site. You know, that'll include some maintenance, parking garages, and paid for by those who use the site, who are making money at the site. I would expect that in the next couple of months, we'll be bringing to you some draft governing documents for public infrastructure districts. These are little districts that can have discrete purposes, take tax increment from the site and use it for those public purposes. The governing documents will control who's on the boards, what they can do, what the mill levies and other things would be. So you'll have control over that. We have an agreement with the state approved by the Executive Appropriations Committee, whereby we've got money for infrastructure. It comes in the form of a loan, so it'll be paid back with interest to the state taxpayers. That requires a loan agreement, which is now drafted and in final review. And we expect that to be signed within a week or two, but it lays out between the point and the Division of Finance the terms of that loan. At our last meeting, we had a presentation from Designing Local about an arts master plan that they're working on to be able to do some things that are really interesting at the site. This placemaking that makes it an interesting place where people can gather, stimulate thought and conversation. And currently, they're conducting focus groups around the state to gather input from members of the public on elements of that plan. You know, we've heard people are interested in reflecting history in the area from, you know, centuries back, reflecting the beauty of Utah's natural environment, reflecting a look to the future and innovation. So we'll be working with Designing Local to share that with you in coming months. Innovation is just heart and center of what we're doing. We want to make sure that this is a place that is solving problems in our state, that is creating new opportunities and taking ideas generated in Utah to commercialize those. We're really grateful, Commissioner, for the Utah System of Higher Education and the good work that they're doing through Jefferson Moss and his outstanding team. We think Convergence Hall will be if maybe the first building on the site, if not at least one of the first. The design of that, I'll say the programming for that is largely finished. And again, within the next few weeks, the plan is to take that out to bid for an architect that can take the program and make it work. They're doing a lot of good work coordinating among the institutions of higher learning in the state so that we're more efficient, using resources well, and drawing on the capacity of all of those institutions. Gabby Tellez, who's I saw online here today, is helping to oversee an innovation fund. That just got increased in this last legislative session to a total of $30 million. It provides some startup funding for ideas that are generated in Utah and helps to nurture those along. Really a nice start. And I think, as I understand it, there are about 20 interns that are helping to review somewhere around 30 great ideas and make sure that that money's going to the most promising ideas. putting together some more industry working groups in some of the target areas of, that the state has identified as targets for economic development, from life sciences, energy, aerospace, high tech, et cetera. And they'll be helping to identify what's going on in those areas, where there are needs that aren't now being met, how we can coordinate with work that's already going on, and creating kind of an ecosystem for innovation, a culture of creativity at this site and other sites. And so we're very much excited about that. These funds and some of the institutional coordination will be housed at the point. Project proposals are a big thing. We've gone through the process of establishing a process to review those. As you know, some have come in. The latest was that statute of responsibility. They're working on a MOU that we hope to see fairly soon. The purpose of that is to give them some indication that they can cite at the point if they meet a number of conditions. And that helps with their fundraising. And so we think the MOU will require that they go through the processes that have been set up in the development agreement, show that they've got the funding to be able to actually build this thing without state money, identify what potential impacts are on economics, on roads, on surrounding uses, et cetera. And so we're anxious to see that move along. You'll be seeing some other proposals that are in development now, and they're interesting, and I think we're going to start seeing many more now that we're making more progress on the development. Interlocal agreements are critical with our government partners, with Draper, with Salt Lake County, with the school district, with the water districts and others. With a number of these items that I've talked about underway, we are able to turn to these with a little more focus, and I want to make sure that we're really, creating agreements that are workable and capture the relationship that we all hope to create. And then finally, just some administrative pieces. As we talked about before in the budget, we have money in the budget for another position, a director of land development. We haven't filled that yet, but we think it's time now. This is a position that would be involved with public financing, reviewing proposals, implementing the development agreement on the site, helping with some financing and others. Need somebody with particular skills and background and experience. We, as I talked about, having somebody overseeing some of those elements frees up our time to work on more strategic issues that need some additional attention. So right now, as you know, we've got 2 employees to build a city, and we're looking to add that expertise of a 3rd. So unless there are objections from anybody on this committee, we plan to issue that job description, and probably in the next week or so, and start the process of trying to hire somebody. So maybe I'd ask at this point, does anybody have concerns or objection to that? Not seeing any. Okay. Communications is always important. We have a detailed strategy working with Muriel and her team at X Factor on opportunities to share the progress that we're making and make sure that the public who own this project know what's going on. A specific piece that you'll see working on is the website upgrade. The website's been great. It's served the purpose as we've started up, but we need it to do more now. we needed to have more of a focus on tenant recruitment, something that can go out nationally, describe what the project is, how people can be involved, and, again, start that process of bringing in the kinds of users that we've been targeting. So that website will still have the information that's on the current website, ability to link into what the board is doing in its meetings, see past meetings, all of our documents, et cetera. So maintaining that transparency. And the final thing I'd mention is that there are 4 members of this board whose terms expire in May. Those are Senator Stevenson, Representative Stenquist, April Cooper, and Lowry Snow. They've all indicated a willingness to continue to serve. We've reached out to the appointing bodies, the governor, the speaker, the president, respectively, and so those reappointments are in process, and it's too late now for any of you to change your minds. So.
Can we find a different word?
That's the, yes, we can. Those terms will die, and no, I'm just kidding. That's a good point. We'll find a better word. So, and then I'll also mention that you might have seen that Jim Russell has accepted a position overseeing facilities for the University of Utah. So he has left the Division of Facilities Construction and Management. And we expect that when the replacement is selected, that the governor will then make an appointment there. Jim's been just outstanding. He has put in a lot of time and effort and brought in a lot of expertise and discipline to the things that we're doing. And we couldn't be where we are without him, and really appreciate that service. But we'll recognize that at another point. I think under the statute, he serves until reappointed or expires. Okay. That's right. That's right. So that's kind of the high level view of some of the things that we're working on. I'd be happy to answer questions or take any comments you have.
Thank you, Alan. Comments or questions from the board for Alan? I don't see any hands, and I don't think we have any online either. So thank you for that presentation. That brings us near the end of our meeting. And by the way, Alan, I think taking this time for this kind of presentation is excellent. It's really good. It updates the board. It also updates the public about the work that we're doing. So thank you for that. So I'm going to take, before I entertain a motion to adjourn, a personal privilege. And just speaking of Alan, I want to let this board know that, and perhaps the public that's listening, that Alan is being recognized this week by Utah Business Magazine, who has been selected as CEO of the Year. There'll be a presentation on Thursday at Grand America, and I can't think of anyone in the state, anyone that I know, that is more deserving as a CEO or otherwise for this recognition. So Alan, he's probably going to be embarrassed that I have mentioned this, but I don't want this meeting to end without me passing that information along and just telling him that what a pleasure it has been to work with him for the last, I don't know, Jerry, how many, Senator Stevenson, when this all started, when we passed this legislation, but Alan was hired shortly after that. And so if you look at the things that have been accomplished by this board and by the project, if I were to ask, or if anyone were to ask me, what is the single most important factor that has helped lead our progress, in my mind, it would be Alan. And So I don't say that lightly. I think his leadership has been absolutely critical and vital to the success of the project. All right. You're absolutely welcome. So with that, I'll entertain, before I do that, thank you all who are here, members of the board, for joining virtually and in person. We can't do business without your help. We can't move this forward without your participation. So thank you. Thank you to the public who has joined us. Thank you to those who have presented, Dawn and others. Thank you all for being here. So with that, I'll entertain a final motion. Motion to adjourn by Senator Stevenson. Do I have a second? Second by April. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We stand